everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we are continuing the trilogy of the cutest little bags ever. Today, we're gonna make the quilt cotton version of a little chunky. Now, if you haven't seen the previous video, we've already made the nylon and vinyl version of this. A little chunky is a pattern from me, OklaRoots, and it is a two-tone tiny boxy bag. It is the cutest little thing to make. It is so addicting, and personally, is one of my favorite patterns. I know I wrote it, but I really love it. So we have two other designs like this in the shop that have been very popular for years. We have the itty bitty boxy bag and we have the classic two-tone boxy bag. These are things we sell templates for. The itty bitty boxy bag does have a pattern. The classic boxy bag pattern is in the works. But these are items that you can already make just using my videos on YouTube. The measurements for these are in the video, so you don't even need to buy a pattern to make these. They're totally free. And the video is totally free. However, if you make a lot of them, we have templates. And those templates seem to sell out almost every week. They are the most popular templates we sell. But the one question I get all the time is, they need something in between. They want the itty bitty box, but they want it bigger, and they want the classic boxy two-tone, but they want it smaller. How do we do that? Well, we make a little chonky. It's right in the middle. It is small, but bigger than the itty bitty, so it's gonna hold more, but it gives you the ability to make that two-tone accent. And I mean, it's just like really, really stinking cute and fun to make. So in this series of 3 videos for a little chunky, the first video is the nylon and vinyl version, which is my personal favorite combination. That's my ingredient list. That's like the best in my opinion. This one is the quilt cotton version. You guys know I don't make a whole lot of quilt cotton bags on my channel. I just personally don't use a lot of quilt cotton anymore, because it requires interfacing. And at the end of the day, I'm pretty lazy. I don't like taking that extra step to iron on interfacing. We will need to do that for this. However, this is scrappy enough, this is small enough, it actually is like really easy. And if I'm willing to do, I mean, I have made so many of these now. If I'm willing to do that, I think anybody can do it. I will say the quilt cotton version of a little chunky, in my opinion, is the easiest version to make. They are all fairly simple. This, however, when it comes to thickness in your sewing machine, if you're a beginner, start with the quilt cotton version. This is gonna be the simplest one for you to sew. I mean, the first time you make it, maybe it'll take 30 minutes, and then after that, you can make multiple of them in 30 minutes. It is a very, very quick bag to sew, and it's also one of those great patterns where you can just cut out your material, plop down at your sewing machine, keep everything there. You don't have to get up again. There's no getting up to move things around. Just stay at your machine and just whip it out. If you've seen me on social media, you probably know I'm fairly obsessed with these little bags. So the pattern for this is available in Shop OklaRoots. There are 3 videos that go with this pattern. They are coming out in 3 different months. The bonded nylon and vinyl version is coming out in January. This one here you're seeing now coming out in February. And then the clear vinyl version, which is probably the most challenging out of all 3 of them, that video is coming out in March. So if you want to wait to buy the pattern and watch all 3 videos, you just have to wait till those months to see them. However, if you do purchase the pattern, you will have access to all 3 of those videos right away. So you don't have to wait until March to see the clear vinyl version, which we're making on an industrial sewing machine. You don't have to wait until then to see it if you have the pattern. However, I always suggest watch the video first, see if it's something you're interested in making, then buy the pattern, try it out. If you love it and you want to make a whole bunch of them, then consider buying the templates. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all, leave them down in the comments section. If there's another combination you'd like to see, let me know. I don't really know what else I can do, but let me know. I will say that we do have an option in the template shop, and the measurements are in the pattern if you want to just make it with 1 piece of fabric. So this one right here is not two-tone, it is just 1 piece of fabric. That template is also the template we use to cut the fusible fleece for the quilt cotton version. Again, all these measurements are in the pattern. These are all rectangles. You don't need templates to make this. They're just there if you'd like them, and they have etchings on them to let you know pattern placement, where everything is going to show up, which is really helpful if you're being very specific about, you know, like let's say you embroidered a piece of material here and you really want that embroidery design to be right there. Templates are going to be helpful for that. All right, guys, let's get started. Okay, so for the quilt cotton version, you're going to need a couple of extra things because of the lightweight nature of quilt cotton. Quilt cotton doesn't have any structure to it. So it doesn't work great for bags, but we can still make it work today. So I have it is a quilt cotton, but it's actually a lawn material. It's like a very, very lightweight, I mean, super lightweight material that I'm using for the 2 top panels and also for the side tabs. All 3 of these pieces are interfaced with woven interfacing. So like SF101, SoFuse, things like that. Just some sort of a lightweight interfacing to give it a little bit more structure to help prevent fraying and to make sure it doesn't stretch. So I have 2 cuts of my top panel for that. 1 cut of my zipper tab. Again, all 3 of those have the interfacing attached. Then I have my bottom cut. Now I like to use like a cotton canvas, maybe something that has just a little bit more thickness to it. This is like a flannel. It is very, very lightweight, so it really doesn't offer any support or structure, which is totally fine because the structure of the bag is going to come from the fusible fleece. Now this fusible fleece cut is a separate measurement. It is in the pattern. It is also part of a template, which we'll talk about in a minute. The fusible fleece is designed to be smaller than the exterior panel, so it's not in the seam by the zipper. We'll talk about that when we get there. Then I have my 2 cuts of lining. These are both quilt cotton, and I do not interface these. If you'd like to interface these with a woven interfacing, you definitely can. It's just going to add some thickness, and it could add a little bit of structure, but I don't think it really needs it. So quilt cotton only for the lining. And then I have a number 5 zipper. This needs to be between 10 and 12 inches long. I prefer to go with an 11-inch long zipper, and then I have a zipper pull already attached. And then my hardware of choice for today is going to be a split key ring and a little key ring swivel, and this can be attached to the bag in the end. We don't need to worry about attaching this to the bag while we're sewing it. And then additionally, I have my bag tag. This is a sew-in bag tag. It's not like the cork one we used previously. This one's gonna go in the lining when I close up that hole. And so it's just another way to add a tag if you don't wanna add it to the exterior. All right, so let's go over all the other stuff. First, the thread. For the top thread, this is the thread that goes through the needle. This is a Tex 45 weight bonded nylon thread. I suggest you use a nylon or a polyester thread with bags. Please don't use cotton thread with bags. We love cotton thread for quilts, not for bags. Cotton thread wears down way too easily, especially when it's being pushed on so much in a bag. Thread in bags have to be tougher because bags are just used in a more tough way than quilts. It's just how it is. So please use some sort of a polyester or nylon thread. This is a thicker thread. It's a 45 weight thread. That doesn't work great for every sewing machine. So if you want to use a 35 weight thread, I will have some linked down below as suggestions. For the bobbin, I'm using a polyester thread from Gutermann. This is a more lightweight thread. It works really well on my bobbin. This nylon thread does not work in my bobbin. I'm gonna go with a Microtech 7010 needle today. I typically use an 8012. That's what I used in all the other ones. However, an 8012 needle is a little thick and can sometimes give me problems with quilt cotton. The hard thing about the quilt cotton version of this bag is there are some very, very thin, lightweight seams, and then there are some thicker seams. So you want a needle that can do both. I'll tell you the 8012 does work, so if that's what you have, you'll be fine. I'm gonna try today a 7010. Then I have my plastic clover clips as always, some double-sided tape. This is optional. I'm not sure if I'm gonna actually need this. I have my turning wand. This is gonna be very, very useful for those corners. A lighter to help just like clean up any loose threads. An air erasing marker. I highly suggest this is what you use unless you have like a chalk marker or something. You just need something that will erase easily. A stiletto and a pair of snips at my sewing machine at all times. And then here are the 2 template options that we have for this pattern. First, we have the full template set, which is down here on the bottom. This is a set of 4, and this is to make the 2-tone boxy bag. This is going to have a template for the top, for the bottom, for the lining, and then also kind of like the number 1 piece for me is the tab piece because it has this little triangle here that makes boxing the corners super easy. Additionally, we have this template right here, which is called the full panel template set. This is if you want to make an exterior piece in just 1 piece. So not 2-tone, no 2-tone. Now the pattern's not written for that, but I did want to have this as an option. This is also what I use to cut the fusible fleece cutout. So you can see there's these little notches inside. You can use that to make the smaller fusible fleece cut if you don't want to use the measurements. But remember, the pattern has measurements for all of these pieces. Templates are not required. This is also what I wanted to mention, a 3-inch by 6-inch ruler. This is going to be very handy, especially for this particular pattern. So we don't use one often on my channel, but today we're using an iron, so I'm waiting for that to warm up. And let's start with this tab. You might notice if you watched one of the other videos for this pattern, This tab is a little bit bigger than the other ones. This tab is going to have no raw edges showing anywhere. So what we're going to do is on the back side, just like we did with the nylon version, we're going to mark a midpoint going along the long edge just like this. Then we're going to take these long raw edges once again, and we're going to fold them back wrong sides together. Now, if you'd like to use tape for this, you can definitely do that. I wouldn't do this method with nylon or vinyl. I would only do this method for this bag with quilt cotton. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press along that edge to help hold it in place. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're just bringing the raw edges back to meet one another at that midpoint line. And then once you have that done, you're going to fold it again in half. So this is that double fold. And if you want to give this a press, you can. I think I will. And then I'll also use some clips here to help hold it in place. And now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch along both long edges of this tab at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you have that top stitch, you're just going to take your tab and fold it in half, bringing the short edges together, pinching at the fold, and then using some scissors to cut right at that fold. And then you can just fold these in half once again so that the short edges come together. And you have these teeny tiny little tabs. They're so cute. If you have any hardware that you want to add, like a swivel hook or anything, add it now. These are both 1 inch wide, so they're very small. I'm going to go ahead and baste along these bottom edges just to hold them together. I'm going to do that at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so now these little tabs are all prepped. I'm going to set them to the side. So now we're going to build the exterior panel, and we're going to build this first, and then we'll attach the stabilizers. So take your base panel and lay it right side up. I don't even know if this has a right side and a wrong side. I'll say this is the right side. And then you're going to take your top panel and lay it right side up. And if you have a directional print, the bottom of the top panel needs to go to the top of the bottom panel, and then flip it down so that they are right sides together. Grab your clips and clip them together. Now I'm going to rotate my base panel, and I'm going to grab my other top panel, and once again bottom of top panel goes to top of bottom panel, and lay them right sides together and clip along that long edge to hold them in place. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch along both of these long clipped edges at 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have those stitched, we're going to press the seam behind the bottom panel. So flip up your top panel and then gently pull down the bottom panel. And you should be able to give it a little tug, especially if you have any sort of woven interfacing on this stuff. You shouldn't have to worry about stretching too much. And I'm going to grab an iron, and I'm just going to iron over that seam to flatten it out really nicely. I'm going to flip this around and do the same thing on the other side. Just gently pulling that bottom panel away from the top panel. Okay, now we can take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to top stitch along the seam on the bottom panel edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along both of these seams. So now your main exterior should be all done. I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to use my template on the back side of this. Now you can just use a ruler if you'd like instead, but since I have the template, I'm just going to use it. And then I'm going to use these little dash marks on the top, and this is going to help me line up my fusible fleece, because I don't want my fusible fleece to get in the seam when I'm sewing it to the zipper. It could add a little bit of bulk that I just don't want to deal with. So then I'm going to grab my fusible fleece cut, and I'm going to lay this over the back side here, and I'm just going to line it up with those dashed lines. So you see I have a nice little overhang of the exterior on there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it all together and flip it so that I'm looking at the right side of the exterior material, and then I'll press down my fusible fleece. Fusible fleece can be a little bit tricky of a stabilizer because it doesn't like it when you press it from the back, and it doesn't like it if you keep your iron in one place for too long. You got to kind of keep moving it around or else it starts to bubble up. But I find that especially with the woven interfacing combination, I don't have any of those problems. So I'm just going to give it a good press here. All right, here we go. And I know that it's making me confused too. I keep thinking that it's all twisted. It's just I didn't cut it straight, guys. We're gonna forgive me for that, okay? So here is on the back, we have a little bit of a overhang of the material. The front, there we go. And now we have a very structured exterior panel. So now let's attach the zipper and the lining. So I'm gonna take my zipper, and my zipper is much longer than it needs to be, which is how I like it. If you like to add your zipper pull on the end and you want to sew it all together with no zipper pull, you can do that. If you know how to do it, go for it. If you don't, that's fine. I'm going to take my zipper, and you see when it opens towards the right, and then it opens over here on the side. And when it closes, it's going to move towards the left. And it's always going to stay closed on the right end. that's the end I want to make sure I put a clip on. So I'm just going to add a clip to the very end like that. So this end, the clipped end, is going to overhang quite a bit. So I'm going to take my exterior panel, and if you have a preference on which is the front and which is the back, think about that now. I'm going to have this as my front. If you have the template set, when you're using the template set, there are dashed lines. Let's see if you guys can see. So you see these dashed lines on the template set. This is going to show you where everything is. Everything above the first dashed line is in the zipper. This window right here, this is the top of the bag. So I'll show you. This window right here is this bit right here. This window on the bottom that's centered is going to be this bit right here. So I try to make sure I put engravings on there so you know where everything is. So when you're figuring out your pattern placement, you can do that. So if it's like, oh, I want my little horn tutor over here to be definitely in this window, I know he will be. He'll be right here because that's where my template says he'll be. So exterior right side up, front panel at the top. Take your zipper, and when the zipper closes, it closes towards the left. We have our clip on the extra end over here on the right, and we're going to flip the zipper right side down. And now we're going to line this up so it overhangs on the left side only by about 1/4 of an inch. You do want a little bit of overhang, but not much at all. But you want a lot of overhang over here on the right side, okay? That's going to be really helpful in a future step. So I'm just going to clip these pieces together. And now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to baste along this clipped edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so you can see I just moved the zipper pull totally out of the way so I don't have to wrestle with it. So now with the zipper wrong side up, exterior right side up, I'm going to grab a lining panel and lay it right side down, and I'm going to line it up on that top edge. Make sure you're lining it up corner to corner with the exterior. Don't line it up with the corner of your zipper. The zipper overhangs. We don't want that. So I like to lift up my panel so I can see the other side and then clip just like that. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew along this top clipped edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have that sewn, we want to press everything away from the zipper, and I'm going to use an iron to do that. So I'm just finger pressing gently the lining away from the zipper, and then I'm going to press with my iron right along that seam, just like that. And then I'm going to pull the zipper in a bit. Then I'm going to pull these two panels wrong sides together, just like that, and then flip it to the right side. Make sure everything is lined up and looks good. Get back on the ironing pad, and now I'm going to give it a press on the right side, right on that seam to get it nice and straight and flat. There we go. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch right along the seam at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you want to back stitch at the beginning and the end, you definitely can. Man, I just love the way fusible fleece looks when you top stitch over it. It's such a cushiony, like snuggly feel. I just love it. All right, so I'm going to move that zipper out of the way again. And now I'm going to take the bottom edge of my exterior, and I'm going to flip it right side up to the top edge. And I'm going to line it up with the top edge of my zipper tape. And I'm going to make sure that the sides are lined up as well. So just give it a little pinch over here and make sure all the sides are lined up. Do the same thing on the right side. So you want the top edge aligned with the edge of the zipper tape, and you want the sides aligned with the sides of the exterior that's already attached. And then just clip along that top edge to the zipper. And now we'll take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to baste along that clipped edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you have it basted on, let's flip this over. So we're looking at the back side of the zipper tape and the right side of the other lining panel, and take your remaining lining panel and lay it right side down. So it's right sides together. Line it up with the top edge that you just basted. Once again, making sure you match up the corners of the exterior with the corners of the lining, and the sides should also match up. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew along this top clipped edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once again, we're going to enlist the help of the iron, and we're going to flip the lining up and away gently, and we're going to press along that seam to make sure it stays there. And then carefully, we're going to open up the zipper. Again, keeping the side that's clipped closed. We're going to open up that zipper, and we're going to press the lining and the exterior panel that has not been top stitched yet, wrong sides together, making sure you're lining up the sides. There we go. And then I'm going to use my iron to just press right along that seam, get it nice and straight and flat. And now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch along this edge right on the top panel at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright, now it's all sewn to the zipper. Isn't that beautiful? This is going to be so cute. So I'm going to take my 2 lining panels and I'm going to lay them right sides together, lining up those long edges. And if you're using a thicker needle or you just have a machine that's used to working with thicker material, this is going to probably be the most challenging part just because it's so lightweight. So I'm going to mark a 3-inch opening right along this long edge and centered. I'm just eyeballing it just like that. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch along this long edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but we're not going to stitch in the opening. So starting at the end, make sure you back stitch, stitch along till you get to the first mark, back stitch well, jump over the opening, continue along the other side, just making sure you really back stitch along these 2 marks because that's how we're going to turn the bag out in the end. Okay, and now I think this is probably the last bit of ironing, but I'm going to press open this seam allowance. So I'm just going to carefully go over this. I'm going to press open the seam allowance a bit too in the opening, but you don't have to be too precise. There we go. You just want to make it nice and open so it's easier to work with. So now let's finish up this bag. So we're going to take our exterior panel and line up the seam between the top and the bottoms, just like that, and then fold along this bottom edge, and you want to mark the midpoint along the bottom part of your bag. So I'm going to use scissors to do that. But if you want to use some sort of a marking tool, you can do that as well. So now what I like to do is I like to attach my tabs now to the base panel. So I'm going to look at the base panel where that midpoint mark is, and I'm going to grab one of my tabs, and I'm just going to center it over that midpoint mark and clip it in place. If you have any hardware like a swivel hook or a D-ring or something like that, and you want to add that to the bag now, you're going to do that on the open side of the zipper. So see how my zipper's open up here, and on the other side where the clip is, it's closed. The open side is where the tab goes that has the hardware. But for me, it doesn't matter because they're the same. So I'm going to do this on the other side as well. And now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm just going to baste these 2 tabs in place. Once again, they're just being basted to the exterior bottom panel. Alrighty. So now take your zipper and make sure it is halfway in there. So if you didn't apply your zipper pull yet, you're going to want to definitely get it on there now and halfway in. And then we're going to start with the bottom panel of the exterior, and we're going to lay that right sides together with the zipper and just use your midpoint on the bottom panel to line it up with the middle of the zipper teeth. Grab your clips and clip these together, and we'll work on the lining in just a moment. Right now we're just focused on the exterior. And then flip this over, and on the lining side where the seam is open, you're going to line up that seam with the middle of the back of the zipper. And then just include it in the clips you already have with the exterior. And then look along the side over here and just flatten out the lining in the exterior, making sure all the edges are matched up. You shouldn't have anything far away from another edge. They should all 4 be matched up just like that. So I'm going to repeat that on the other side. The other side's a little bit trickier because the zipper's open, so I'm just going to pinch the zipper closed and keeping both sides of the teeth as close together as possible. I'm going to line up the midpoint of the bottom panel over those teeth and clip in place. And then I'm going to flip this around. Using the seam on the lining, I'm going to line that up with the back of the zipper, centering it and adding it to the clips. And then once again, I'm going to go along the sides here and just flattening them out. And I'm just going to tell you, the quilt cotton version of this is just so easy compared to the other 2 I do. It's very, very simple to do this. All right, so this is how it should look. Both the lining and the exterior are wrong sides out and they're all clipped together. Now we're gonna sew along both of these short edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, you're gonna wanna trim down the end of your zipper tape that's hanging out a lot. If you'd like to have each end of the zipper tape hang out just by about 1/4 of an inch, that's fine. Especially for the quilt cotton version, it makes it a little bit easier for us to grab our lighter and just melt down the frayed edges of the zipper tape, because you do want to seal those, but you also don't want to get the fire on the quilt cotton because it just catches on fire. So then I'm going to grab my scissors and I'm going to cut off the corners, but only the corners. So about an inch in from the corners, I just do a nice slant. This is going to make it easier to box these corners. If you leave them uncut, you're gonna find that they're really bulky and you might have a hard time getting it to end up the way you want it. So now we're gonna flip our bag so it's lining right side out. And the exterior is going to be inside the bag. So just be careful here. Nice and gentle with quilt cotton. It can rip. So carefully finger poke out those corners first. I like to have my fingers in the hole in the lining, and then open up the zipper all the way and use your fingers to poke out the corners from inside the bag as well. So this is from the exterior side. And then you can grab your turning wand and you can use that to really get in there and carefully poke out those corners so they are nice and crisp. And you should find with the quilt cotton version, they get very crisp, like better than any other version. And then I'm also going to go in the bag and poke out those corners really well. Just take your time here to set this up. It's going to make boxing it a lot more enjoyable if you prep it right. Okay, so there's a couple different ways to box these corners. I'll show you the two that I like. So the first one's going to be using a ruler. And so when you look inside the bag, you see that you have the front panel here, the seam between the top and the bottom, and that's where there's top stitching. And then you have the side over here, a seam between the top and the bottom, but there's no top stitching there. So you want to line these up together. In the end, they want to meet. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to poke this corner and turn it into a little triangle and just kind of eyeball it to get that seam to be running right down the middle. Then I give it a little pinch and I'm going to open up the inside and I'm going to check these two and make sure they're lined up. If they're way off, you need to start just kind of pushing it down with your fingers. You can also feel the seam from the outside, especially with the quilt cotton version. Just do your best to take your time here and feel around to make sure those seams line up. Then you're going to grab your ruler and you're going to line up the 1 inch mark with the seam. And then the corner here, like the 0 mark, should line up with one side, and then the 2 inch mark should line up with the other side, creating this little triangle. Again, the 1 inch mark is going right up that seam. And then we're going to hold that in place while we grab a marking pen, preferably an air erasing marker, and you're just going to follow along the bottom of the ruler to create a stitch line just like that. So I'm going to add a couple of clips to it, and so we can check it out. Just give it a quick peek on the inside. Make sure it's lined up. So then we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch right over that line. And I suggest you backstitch at the beginning and the end. So now it's good to check these corners after each time you sew to make sure that they are exactly how you want. And you also want to make sure that we don't have anything that got rippled. Sometimes kind of transferring it from where you're sitting to the sewing machine, things can kind of bunch up and then it pinches. And so you want to make sure there's no pinching and everything looks good. That looks perfect. So I'm going to flip this back out. And my preferred way to do these corners is to use that little tab piece. So you're going to want to set it up the same way you did before by kind of putting your fingers in there. And the key is that it should be nice and flat. If you feel like the exterior is pulled away a little bit and you just have a piece of lining here, so like there's just lining here and exterior, and I were to flip this out, nothing is caught. So you got to really put your finger in there and push it out towards the corners of your triangle with your lining. And then once again, just kind of feel around to make sure that the seams are matched up. And then I'm going to grab my template and I'm just going to lay this right over that corner. And this template has dashed lines for the corner edges and for the seam. So the center line goes right over the seam. The sides of the triangle go over the folded edges of my bag. And then it should just line up perfectly like that. So there's no measuring, no numbers, no thought really that goes into it. You just line it up. So now I'm going to add clips to make sure it all stays in place. And I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew right over that marked line, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Okay, so you can see I did all the rest of the corners. How stinking cute is this? I'm not going to turn it out just yet. I have been checking the corners. I know they look good, so we're going to wait till the end to turn it out. But I'm going to close this hole in the lining. And you want to close the hole in the lining with the bag like this. It's going to be very difficult to close it if you turn it right side out. So just kind of pull the bottom exterior away from the lining hole and just tuck your fingers in there. Grab your clips and you're just going to fold the raw edges in and down into that hole. And they should already have like a fold from when you iron this, But if not, just shove them in there. It doesn't matter if it's a 1/4 inch seam allowance or not. It just needs to be closed. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's gonna look great. So I use the clips to close this up first. And then I'm gonna grab my little woven fold over tag and I'm gonna take one of the clips off and I'm just going to insert this into that hole just enough. So I'm kind of eyeballing it. There we go. You wanna make sure you get both sides in there. There you go. And then just add the clips around it to hold it in place. And now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm gonna top stitch along this small clipped edge, closing the hole in the lining. I'm gonna top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, there's our tag. Ready for the moment of truth? Flip this out. It should be very easy to flip out. Quilt cotton, it's just easy to work with. It really is. Besides being lightweight, it's really easy to work with. Oh my gosh, this looks so stinky cute. Look at this little guy. Look at this little cutie patootie. And look, see, told you, right where I wanted my horn tooter, it's right there. Some little horn tooter, look at that. Oh my gosh, it's so stinking cute. And if you find that it's a little crinkly, you can definitely carefully iron out where the crinkles are, because with fusible fleece it can do that. It just takes a quick iron and then you're good as new. It's gonna look amazing. I'm going to attach my key ring now. So I'm going to thread the little hook hardware onto my split ring. And I'm using a split ring that is very easy for me to open. You know, some of them, my nails could never open them. And I'm just gonna carefully thread this onto the tab. And I like to do it on the side where when the zipper's closed, that's where the key ring goes. So that way when I'm holding it like this, it's closed. I don't have to worry about the zipper opening and everything falling out. Isn't that adorable? Oh my gosh, I hope you guys love making this. They're so addicting. Oh, you guys, this is so stinking cute. I love these little guys so much. Yeah, it's a trumpeter, the horn tooter. We talked about, my daughter played trumpet. She switched instruments, but she did play trumpet in band for a while. I just love making this little guy so much. This is such a great gift item. As we go into the spring and we go into the end of the school year, I'm a mom, my kids are in school, so this is just something I think about a lot. This is a great teacher gift. It really is. This is something I think teachers would love. This is a great summer traveling item. I'll tell you, when I first started making the itty bitty boxy bag, the whole reason I made it was to gift to people on our first Disney cruise. There was like a group thing where you exchange gifts and hide them. I don't remember. But anyways, I made a whole, I made like over 100 of them to gift out to people. And I saw so many people walking around with this little guy all over the cruise ship, holding little items. And now I want to make hundreds of these and I need to go on a cruise. I should go on a cruise. I can't go on a cruise right now. A little Chonky is just such a fun pattern. It is such a fun little guy to make. And I think that, I don't know, it's one of those bags. I always can tell if a bag is a good pattern if my kids come in and grab it. And first they take it, which they've all been claimed. Second, my daughter, who sews as well, but she's still starting out, she says, is that something I can make? That's like the #1 sign that this is a fun pattern, is if she says, is that something I can make? Because now she's already thinking about material, fabrics, design she wants to use to make this. And that makes me so excited. And yes, this is definitely something that my daughter can make. She can make a snack bag. She can make an itty bitty boxy bag. She's made both those things. This is something very easily she can make. So if you make these and you share them on social media, please make sure you tag me. I'm OklaRoots everywhere. Also, if you want to use the hashtag #OklaRootsTuts, I would love to see your version. I'm so excited about these. I'm so excited to see what you guys do with them. You guys are like 1,000% more creative than I am. So whenever you post these things online, it just inspires me. But I love these little, they're just, I mean, look at them. They're just like little babies. You just want to hold them. I love them. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.